And we're back! Greetings everyone, this is Lucian Vâlsan broadcasting from Cluj-Napoca, Transylvania. As always, alongside with me is Herr Jon Gunnarsson broadcasting from Deutschland, and our producer James Huff making sure everything works just fine broadcasting from the US. Greetings gentlemen, greetings there Jon.
Good evening. How is it going for you?
It's going pretty bad actually. I've been suffering from severe noises of hammer drills, which prevented
Okay.
me from doing any sort of meaningful intellectual work. But other than that, oh yes, and of course because of that I'm pissed off. I haven't been uploading any videos this week and haven't produced any meaningful content, which is annoying. But other than that, yeah, I'm doing quite fine.
Yeah, that sucks. I mean, it's going pretty well for me. Weather is fine here, and don't really have anything to complain about. No loud hammering noises.
Oh yeah, the weather sucked as well. It rained like London 24/7 since Tuesday. In some mornings it was semi-okay, but then you would go out and by the time you were 1 hour into the trip outside, it started raining out of nowhere because potato. And this has been the entire week. It's been annoying as hell.
Okay, then let's see how if we can round out this week with a good show.
Yeah, with the good show, because definitely not with the good news. All right, let's kick it.
Okay, the first one is from the Independent from the UK, and it's kind of good news. Um, International Women's Day 2016. What women who don't identify as feminists have to say. Not every woman will be marching under the feminist banner this year. Paula Wright, 45. I stopped identifying as a feminist a few years ago when I was studying rape and discovered that prominent feminist organizations were misrepresenting rape prosecution statistics for political reasons. The Stern report on rape later officially confirmed this and also noted that the practice could stop victims from coming forward. In other words, feminism was placing ideology before truth and before people. I found that unconscionable. It is still happening. Rape statistics are constantly being misrepresented to frighten women and make them believe they live in a rape culture. In fact, successful rape prosecutions are on par with other crimes at over 50%. Even attrition rates are commensurable to other crimes, and victims should not feel there is little chance of receiving justice if they come forward. Our justice system is not failing victims of rape. Rather, feminism is failing us in our justice system. I identify as an egalitarian. From Ellen Grace Jones, 33, I am absolutely, unequivocally not a feminist. Saying that would have been waving placards saying that would I have been waving placards alongside the suffragettes? Hell yes. Am I supportive of a woman's rights? Of course, but feminism today has been co-opted by hyper-offended, self-serving, navel-gazing Twitterati mob who mostly care about furthering their own, actually rather privileged, agenda and the plight of their fellow sisterhood who are, like, genuinely oppressed. You know, women living under Sharia law, or the 80% of North Korean female refugees that have become commodities for purchase. Case in point, the International Women's Day schedule is almost all career-enhancing, work-centered conferences and events for the benefit and advancement of Western women. Suspiciously absent are charitable causes which would really empower oppressed and abused women in the rest of the world that do not have any voice at all. Irrespective, I have no beef with International Women's Day existing, but as an egalitarian who champions equal rights for both sexes, maybe International Men's Day deserves the same blanket wall-to-wall coverage too. From Elizabeth Hobson, 27. It's been noted that the best thing that can be said about feminism is that it's redundant in a culture where we have equal rights. I think that this statement obfuscates the damage it does. It's a recipe for ruining lives. We see it in divorce statistics. Proceedings are predominantly initiated by women who leave to be happy, but end up unhappy and often have done irreparable damage to their children. The family court system is hostile to fathers' rights and is an example of the political, not just personal, devastation that feminism has wreaked on equality and why it must be stopped. From Jane Sandman, 53. The modern feminist movement carries some problematic outlooks with it and can seem divisive rather than forging a new way forward for true equality. I have always been more attracted by the term humanism. It seems much richer to try and understand what makes us fully human, and then from there understand the barriers that people face to realize this. At times, that is understanding women have to face particular barriers and calling for those who are humanist, both women and men, to address that. C.F. Ferguson, 17. Egalitarians are those who strive for equality for everyone at the same time. When anyone classifies themselves as a feminist, they are pressing for women's rights more than equality. I'm not a feminist because the word only divides the world more. So it's quite interesting that they are willing to publish an article like this on
Especially
International
independent.
Women's Day of all days.
And especially the Independent. I mean, if the Spectator had published this, it would have been perfectly appropriate. The Spectator is known to go against uh, the public opinion, the generalized consensus, whatever that is. But the Independent, yeah, that's quite surprising.
Yep.
As for the arguments put forth by these ladies, well, some of them are, well, not particularly to my liking.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, sure, they undermine the generalized so-called progressive feminist consensus, but that doesn't make them good arguments by any stretch of the imagination. Uh,
I really like what the first one to say, what Paula Wright to say, that I don't really see anything to disagree with that.
yeah, that's probably
I
the
don't
only
know
one that's.
if these numbers she cites are correct. I don't know if that's exactly correct, but it seems to
Yeah,
be
they
about
are. I
right.
mean, even the Guardian admits that rape prosecutions are not, in fact, really that bad as the what's the organization? It's called WAR, Women Action and something, in the UK, which is the primary organization that keeps peddling that our justice system isn't prosecuting rapists enough, when in fact that's not exactly true. Uh, so yeah, the first one is a very cogent argument. I mean, it makes sense, and yeah, and it is true. Feminism is failing the justice system by infiltrating it and making it well, the how should I put it, the clusterfuck that it is now, where meeting for half a second with an actress in the train station makes it grounds for sexual assault prosecution and being banned from the internet and things of that nature. We covered the case.
Yeah, and I mean, um, if I were a rapist, this kind of narrative is exactly the sort of thing I would be spreading, because it means that women will be less likely to come forward if they are raped, because they just believe that police won't believe them anyway, and only, I don't know, 3% or whatever the number is of cases lead to a conviction, etc., etc. Then why even bother? Because it's not going to help anyway.
Maybe that's the explanation why the Oxford anti-rape chief campaigner turned out to be a rapist herself. If you remember the case.
Yeah, or maybe there's even some particularly cynical people who believe that, if we spread this narrative, maybe that might increase the number of rapes and therefore make the problem bigger, and therefore, increase our funding and so on. I don't think that most people are so cynical, but maybe some of them are.
I wouldn't be surprised if some of them are, but yeah, I don't think all of them are, or even most of them. But I would not be surprised. I mean, it has already happened. The guy who essentially created the the domestic violence framework and the so-called marital rape laws through the entirety of South America, and then his theories spread to other parts of the world as well, including Europe. He turned out to be a rapist and a pedophile himself. So, and he was also amongst the people who said, "Oh well, it's no point in coming forward. No one will believe you. The prosecution is heavily biased and things of that nature, when in fact, well, that wasn't exactly the case. As for the second individual, well, it's that kind of argument where, uh, I mean, yes, she is correct that, International Women's Day schedule is almost all career-enhancing, work-centric conferences for the benefit and advancement, not of Western women, but rather of career feminists, I would say. But the second part of her argument is they're absent are charitable causes which would really empower oppressed, and yeah, what I would love to see some examples of that, uh, in her opinion, of course, because let's be fair. I mean, what can a registered feminist charity in the United Kingdom could do for, I don't know, let's say female North Korean refugees? Because she gave that example, I think. Yes. Uh, how? What could they do? I mean, making a International Women's Day march through downtown London or Manchester is something that they can do. Whereas, I don't know, going illegally into China and then breaking all sorts of laws to help those who illegally cross the border from DPRK to the People's Republic of China, I don't think they can do that. That shit is expensive. And risky, and feminists can be accused of many things, but willingness to take risks is not one of them. Also, that statistic, 80% of North Korean female refugees have become commodities for purchase. Well, that's a guesstimate. It's probably slightly lower than that, but then again, compared to what? Because you know what happens to male refugees?
What does happen to them?
Well, they're being caught by the People's Republic of China's police and deported back into North Korea, from where they usually end up in a gulag, or shot, or both. I mean, yeah, well, it's bad that women who manage to flee North Korea, some of them, I don't think it's 80%, because even if we're looking at the numbers who eventually arrive in South Korea, that should tell the enough story that they're not 80%. But yeah, it is bad that they end up being, essentially mail order brides for Chinese men. That's bad, but when put it into context, it's not really the worst thing that could happen. It's just not.
Yeah.
And I don't see how feminism could solve this in any way, shape, or form. I mean, it's a brutal Bolshevik dictatorship there. It's not something that feminism can mitigate in any way, shape, or form. I mean, it's not like Kim Jong-un will going to give a shit about British feminist rhetoric.
Oh no, a British NGO protests against my regime. Surely I must resign.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure that's one of the reasons why Kim Jong-un is having a hard time sleeping at night, because British NGOs and Twitterati idiots disagree with him. Come on, seriously. Uh, so yeah, there's that. I mean, that's the problem with these kinds of arguments. Yeah, well, feminists should go in places under Sharia law or take care of North Korean female refugees and whatnot. I disagree. I think feminists should go on Mars, or in the next galaxy, preferable, to stop inflicting damage upon the human race, because those allegedly more worthy causes, such as combating Sharia law and whatnot, I don't think they're cases, they're instances for which feminism is even equipped to deal.
Yep.
I mean, think about it this way: when the femen type of feminists went to Tunisia, their main enemies were not the conservative Muslims, but the Islamic feminists. So maybe, just maybe, British feminists, Western feminism, European feminism, whatever, it's just not equipped to deal with these kinds of things. Why not accept that and move on?
Yeah, and they just don't have the kind of knowledge about local conditions that you would need to actually make a difference there.
Yeah, not only that they don't have knowledge, but you could get that, but their framework, their way of thinking is completely incompatible with the reality on the ground. And that's harder to change because we know people are very reluctant to change their opinions for the most part. And this applies to
Yep.
everyone, not just to feminists. Okay, the third argument, what is, it's redundant. Yeah, it has always been redundant, but let's skip that for a while. Okay,
And
it's
it's divorce statistics and so on. That's I think that's
fair.
a sound point.
Okay, the fourth carries some problematic outlooks. Jesus Christ. Okay, again, this thing that it is divisive. This Jane Sandman lady, and also this young woman, Sia Ferguson, brings that it's divisive. I don't understand why this is why this is supposed to be something bad. I mean, something being divisive is not necessarily bad. Admittedly, it's not necessarily good, but it's not something. It's not a sound argument.
I mean, being divisive is generally a bad thing. I mean, it's not like a knockdown argument. If something is divisive, then it must necessarily be wrong or something like that. But um, being divisive is definitely not a good thing, and especially if it's divisive in the sense of putting men and women in an adversarial position. Um, I think that's definitely a bad thing.
Yes,
Maybe,
but none of them clarify what they mean by divisive, and that's what I'm trying to say here.
yeah. I mean,
Just
of
because you
course,
say something is divisive doesn't make it bad or good, per se.
yeah. I mean, but they have like 100 words to make their point. I mean, they can't elaborate everything in great detail here.
Fair point, although some of these are longer than 100 words, but yeah, I guess they did have a limit somehow. Okay.
And then the last one is like egalitarian. I don't.
Uh, we did a show about egalitarianism, so those of you listening on YouTube, just go on YouTube, Voice of Europe, egalitarianism, and you'll get there a less than gushing view of it on egalitarianism.
And then just this whole point that the word feminist is a bad word because it's automatically unequal or something. Um, that is not the problem. If the world were actually one in which women were overwhelmingly disadvantaged and discriminated against and so on, then if you were in favor of equal rights, would make sense to name yourself a feminist because you advocate for the rights of women, because equal rights in that kind of world would mean more rights for women and less rights for men or fewer rights. Um, and then calling yourself a feminist would make perfect sense. But I
The
don't.
only problem is that that world doesn't exist, especially not where there is a high concentration of feminists.
Yes.
Yeah, and since I mentioned the Bolshevik dictatorship of North Korea, and I said that feminists may not actually be completely equipped to deal with that, well, one of the reasons is that, well, some of them are actually part of that way of thinking. And this is where it comes the next one, coming from a Romanian news source, Romanian Feminism as a Marxist Sect and the Struggle for the Right Not to Cook. Feminism, in its most visible and noisy form of today, has nothing to do with women and everything to do with the Marxist theories about oppressed and oppressors. Women are thus objectified in the name of the ideology, and objectified is a term exclusive to the feminist vernacular. In their politically correct and multicultural Marxist delirium, of which feminism is a part of, women can be less oppressed than Islamists, for instance, on their progressive oppression scale. This is the reason why feminism is beating about the bush about, let's say, the Köln events. And it does that either naked, see Femen for reference, or wearing clothes. And this is at its best. At its worst, feminism is busy finding mitigating circumstances for criminals. So feminism is not just pure and simple insanity, but it's systematized insanity. On March 8th, the quote-unquote International Women's Day was the ideal occasion for a little communist hysteria happening downtown Bucharest. A group of feminist girls under the leadership of Veda Popovic staged a performance in the name of the struggle for the quote-unquote women's rights and for the right to be woman and not to be men. They did so dressed in men, all of them. And since the Women's Day was introduced by Alexandra Kollontai in the USSR under the leadership of Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, the climax of the feminists' performance was the communist symbol of the raised fist. And in order to eliminate any shadow of doubt about what they meant, the communique published by the organization Feminism Romania also includes an eulogium to the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917, a revolution which, amongst other things, led to millions of women being executed or sent to die in the Gulag. But let's quote from their own words. Quote, on International Women's Day, ever since 1917, a group of women striking at a textile factory in Petrograd, Russia, triggered the Russian Revolution, asking their husbands and brothers to join them. They managed to mobilize 90,000 workers to demand their rightful payment, the country's exit from the war, and the end of the Tsarist repression. Ever since the beginning of the 1900s, International Women's Day was used by workers primarily as a day of resistance and organizing, and secondly as a celebration and commemoration day for the harsh struggle of the proletarians from around the world. Many countries, including Afghanistan, Cuba, Vietnam, or Russia, celebrate March 8 as an official holiday. End of quote. Because we all know that Afghanistan, Cuba, Vietnam, and Russia are just fine examples to follow in the struggle for women's rights, of course. So, to sum up, on March 8, the Romanian institutionalized feminism thought it's a good idea to fight for quote-unquote women's rights by glorifying the communist genocide.
I can sense a lot of feminist butthurt.
Oh yeah, the amount of butthurt per comment when this article came out. Now, full disclosure here, I know the author personally, but yeah, the amount of butthurt was well expected. But what is more striking is not just that they did that, and you can see the pictures in the article, and if you look on Facebook, you can find the entire gallery there. There are even more than that, and all of them look like either a jihadi demonstration or a communist march. Now, they want it to be a communist march, but for some reason, some of those pictures resemble a jihadi march. But yeah, whatever. The problem is not just that they did that, but it did not come as something specific to Bucharest. For instance, in Göteborg, Sweden, despite indications from the capital to avoid alignment with communists, the Social Democrats marched on March 8 alongside with the Revolutionary Communist Youth and the Communist Party of Göteborg, as the local press, through Expressen no less, explains. Expressen being kind of the guardian of Sweden. And in France, there is such thing called the striking season. Now, which that means essentially a period when everyone goes to strike because potato, and it's usually from early March till mid-May. And this year, it started on March 8 with the Young Communists of Paris. Yes, that's a real organization. Staging a march similar to the one in Bucharest, followed by a conference on female dialogues. And then 1 day later, on March 9, the communist collectives held a general assembly at the Saint-Denis University in Paris, in which they approved the student strike due to take place sometimes later on this month. And the reason for the strike is to scare the bourgeoisie and protest the lack of feminism in the university. No, they're not joking. They're not joking. And I'll leave the link in the chat room. The Le Figaro reports in great detail about their General Assembly, and it literally reads like the reports of the 13th Congress of the Communist Party back in the days here in Romania. It's really chilling to read. So yeah, if anyone is is able to read French and wants to read some commie propaganda, there's the link in the chat room. What's the matter with feminists and so many commies? I mean, in the past, when you would make them Marxist thugs, they would piss off and say, no, we're not Marxist thugs. Nowadays, it seems that it's no longer a secret.
Nowadays, it's just say, oh, we're Marxists, but we're not thugs.
Amazing. I've started, every time I read these kinds of things, I'm like, Imagine, I don't know, Justice for Men and Boys in Britain making a November 19th march alongside with, I don't know, let's say the British National Party. Uh, how would that be portrayed by the press? I don't think it would be portrayed in very favorable terms, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and I mean BNP is still less radical than, actual communists.
Yes, I should probably take. No, not even the EDL is that radical. I don't know. If someone from Britain is listening live, please tell me in the chat room the most batshit crazy fascist organization that you can think of in Britain. Because yeah, you're right. BNP isn't really that radical. It's crazy, but it's not batshit crazy. I mean. Yeah, Minjin says in the chat room, well, whilst being thugs. If you've seen, I don't know if you've missed it, Lauren Southern has had the piss thrown at her, quite literally, for daring to say that there is only two genders. So, we're not Marxist thugs. Oh, here's some piss on your head. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. But seriously, and these kinds of commie and not just dog whistling but outright marches alongside with commies uh, have been quite common on March 8th. A similar thing happened not just in Paris but also in Lyon, in Stockholm, in Göteborg, in Oslo, in Norway, in Italy, in several cities, in Eastern Europe only here in Poland, and in both of them the mainstream press ignored them, which I guess it's a way of of keeping it quiet. But it's quite a common theme. Could it be because, at least in Europe, the great significance of March 8 is of Soviet uh, origin? Because yeah, sure, you can say, well, it comes from the 1850s in New York and whatnot. Yeah, sure, but in its institutionalized form, it was exported to first of all to Eastern Europe by the Soviet Union, and then to France by Soviet Union sympathizers, and then from France to the United Kingdom by Soviet Union sympathizers or even employees, and then it spread from there. So at least in Europe, it is of Soviet origin. But you would have expected that almost 100 years later they would have lost that connection.
Yeah, I guess it's just that there's just a lot of overlap between communism and feminism. A lot of basically the vast majority of people on the far left are feminists, and most feminists are pretty far left.
You think? Yeah, I mean, now sure these kinds of discourse usually brings out the butthurt leftists out from the bushes, and they're like, well, there is such thing as right-wing Catholic feminism. Yeah, and when was the last time you saw a march of Catholic feminists? So, whilst not all feminists are far left, well, yeah, but most are. A significant proportion of them are. What's interesting is that there used to be some sort of a shame to march with communist symbols, uh, at least in Eastern Europe. Now it seems that that kind of shame is rather fading. And I'm still expecting to see them do the same thing in the US. I think it's going to happen soon enough. Maybe not next year, but in 5 or 6 years.
I mean, after all, we already have a major presidential candidate who is openly calling himself a socialist, and
Yeah, I call him a Bolshevik because he is. I mean, it's very hard, except for the Gulag thingy, it's very hard to distance him from, I don't know, Trotsky or Lenin. So yeah, there's that. I mean, it's all the revolutionary talk, all of the let's expand the state beyond any limits, and then we'll see from there gradually to transition into a post-revolutionary order. That kind of thing is there. And unlike other more covert socialists and big state spenders and whatnot, Mr. Sanders, to his credit, he actually believes what he says, and is pretty open about it. Yes, I'm a socialist. So what?
Yeah, and it's definitely very worrying that. So I mean, it's not like he runs around constantly proclaiming he's a socialist, but he doesn't hide the fact that he is a socialist, and that he still has been as popular as he is quite worrying. I mean, he's not going to get the Democratic nomination. He's not going to become president.
Nope.
I mean, even if he somehow manages to defeat Hillary Clinton, if I don't know if she gets indicted or something like that, which I don't think is going to happen, but if it might happen, then he's going to lose in a landslide in the general election. But still, that the fact that he's gone so far is quite worrying.
Yeah, well, in all fairness, he has gone so far because all the other non-Clinton alternatives have dropped out. So, so there's that. I mean, but yeah, I mean, it is still worrying, and I don't know. The only positive thing that can be said is that in the voters, as they get older, they get less, they're less likely to call themselves socialists or even or like socialist ideals. I mean, there were quite a few individuals who described themselves as socialist when they voted for Clinton, for instance, and then lo and behold, 10 years later, they were all lining up to vote for Bush and not particularly fond of the socialist label. So, there's that. I mean, with age tends to come some wisdom. I never understood how this works, but it seems to work every single time. Uh, with younger folks being more left-leaning and 30 plus folks being far less left leaning.
I don't know. Maybe it's becoming parents that does it. Um, that you are now responsible. You're responsible for other people. You have to um, look out for your own family, and at least if you're not on welfare, then you actually see um, that everything costs lots of money, and having all these great government programs might not be such a good idea if you have to pay all these taxes, and it seems that just becoming old and especially becoming parents makes people just more conservative and especially more fiscally conservative.
Hmm. Yeah, that may be the case, although I think Friedman had this theory that everyone is a socialist until they start paying income taxes,
Yeah, maybe that is also a big part of it. Yes.
which usually tends to happen before becoming parents. But yeah, I mean, uh, there's that, but still, I mean, it is amazing, and I always get emails like that. Well, what it is to do? Because you can't actually ban socialism because that would be giving them victimhood status and whine that they're being oppressed, and that's how they won the last time. Uh, so I don't know. I mean, the best thing that can be done is to influence the culture to such an extent to become unacceptable again to be a totalitarian thug, because that's what socialism is.
Yeah, and it's just there's always something that's been quite baffling to me um, how there's this very severe stigma towards National Socialism and fascism and so on, all these sort of far right ideas. Um, while socialism and communism, it's sort of this it's sort of much more mild. This, yeah, it's not a good idea, and it's maybe in theory a good system, and it's well intended, but it just doesn't work out in practice, so we should be against it. It's this much milder reaction, and I'm not quite sure why it is. Maybe it's just because Stalin won the war, and
Yeah, I mean, if Churchill could tolerate Stalin, then it maybe isn't really that bad. I've actually heard that argument.
yeah, good old Uncle Joe.
Yep. Okay, well, the next one is very long, but essentially, Romanian president promulgated the bill that makes November 19th the official Men's Day, which I intend to use to troll city halls, because, well, I've word goes around that the commie hysteria of the feminists in Bucharest on this March 8th was in part funded by the city hall. If it turns out to be true, I really hope it's not true. But if it turns out to be true, then I'll spend the week with November 19 in Bucharest, trolling the city hall and making them fund me going out to drink some beers with my pals in Bucharest as a march for International Men's Day. Now, obviously, I'll publicly reject their funding, but just to make a point. And because my purpose would be to make them be ashamed of themselves for financing such thing, and also I'll use this against them in the in the campaign because there's local elections this year. So I'll actually start putting into practice what I already said. Make the culture unacceptable. Make it culturally unacceptable to fund or align yourself with commie hysterics. So yeah, that's good news because because if Klaus Johannes has promulgated this bill, then I have legal grounds to troll city halls. It's going to
Sounds
be
like
so
fun.
good. Yeah, it's going to be fun, and definitely I'll report about that as I'm doing it. Okay, let's get to the next one.
Okay, this one is from Spectator from the UK. Britain's young men are falling further and further behind. Does anyone care? The toughest causes to campaign for are those which are not fashionable. To fight racism in the 1950s or stand up for gay rights in the 1980s took guts, and the progress made today is largely down to those who took up the cause before it became a form of virtue signaling. International Women's Day should be a chance to remember the billions of women who are treated appallingly in developing countries. But when it comes to Britain, the battle has pretty much been won. The pay gap is a problem for women born before 1975, but not after. The problem is sorting itself out. For the under 40s, there's a negative pay gap, i.e., men are paid marginally less. But as Isabel Hardman wrote in her superb Spectator cover story, there are now good reasons to worry about male equality, especially if we focus on the inequality that begets other inequalities, educational attainment. It's the clearest sign yet of trouble brewing for the next generation of men. The below shows GCSE attainment. Girls overtook boys in 1986, and after that the attainment gap has grown. The below graph shows O-grade GCSE attainment from 1962 to 2006. Worryingly, this is now converting into a widening and indefensible gender gap at universities, and gender attainment gap is at its worst among working-class boys. UCAS break the data down. The below is the gender gap in university applications from the poorest 20% of neighborhoods. Does anyone doubt that more fuss will be made about this gap if girls were the losers? UCAS have tried to bring attention to this, saying, "We have previously highlighted the unacceptably large and widening gap between entry rates for men and women, and this year shows young men, and especially young white men, falling even further behind. We draw attention to this again this year because our new measures are signaling that the widening gap between men and women is acting to stall progress in reducing inequality overall." That's from their report on university applications in 2014-15, which says 18-year-old women were a third more likely to go to university. Remember the headlines in the House of Protest from the equality NGOs? Me neither. In the rich world, at least, the cause of feminism is becoming detached from the cause of equality, and those who truly care about the latter need to start worrying about our boys.
Yeah, with the mention that the cause of feminism has always been detached from the cause of, of equality, but other than that, yeah, the author has a point.
I would sort of take issue with this idea that this gap is indefensible. Um, I would
From a
have no
progressive point of view, it is indefensible.
no problem with this gap if it were actually just the outcome of people's choices and people's aptitude and so on. Um, but the problem is that this gap is largely the result of decades of efforts focused pretty much exclusively on improving the situation for girls and for women and uh, giving them more and more advantages. If it were actually just a level playing field and women were coming out ahead, then we'd be completely fine with that. So it's not the outcome that's the problem. It's the way the system is skewed in favor of women and girls. That is the
Mm-hmm.
problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, an argument that I usually make when I argue with local feminists in this country is that, for instance, in the telecom business, in which I worked for quite some time, the statistics show that women make like 25 to 30% more than men in the telecom industry. But that doesn't mean that the telecom industry is misandric per se, because it isn't. It's just that women tend to choose either the better paying jobs, or in the case of jobs that pay according to abilities, women overall tend to have better results, and that's absolutely fine. However, in this case, with the educational attainment of young white men in Britain, that's not the case at all. I mean, every single educational institution, at least the quote unquote respectful ones, or respected, have dozens upon dozens of programs meant to cater or to favor anyone except young white men. And you can spin that as privilege, whatever, overcompensation, but at the end of the day, it's still not anything else than a misandric system.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just a situation where boys are systematically discriminated against.
Pretty much, yes. And that's the indefensible part. The outcome itself, well, as you said, if it had been due to personal choices and personal abilities and whatnot, that would be absolutely fine. Amazing. And I'm not convinced that this will change unless the academia in Britain will start feeling what the academia in France is feeling these days, which is to say that the employers no longer give a toss about their credentials, and essentially encourage their young applicants uh, to drop college altogether. Alcatel has started doing that, where they are very young employers who are part-time, uh, whatever. They're starting to tell them, well, maybe you should just drop the college and you'll learn the rest of it here with the company, and we'll put you on a tenure track and whatnot. Especially to their best ones, they started doing that. And obviously, the academics are furious and they're planning a strike, of course, because that's how things are dealt with in France. But nevertheless, if such thing were to happen on a
Wait,
larger scale,
wait a second. How are they striking? How is that supposed to hurt these companies? I mean,
I didn't say it's logical. I said that it's the standard operating procedure. You're absolutely correct that it makes no sense. But then again, French labor protests and making sense haven't been good friends, well, since the French Revolution, really. So, I mean, not. Don't try to make sense of that. It has never been about that. Anyway, what I was trying to say is that if these kinds of things would start to happen in Britain on a larger scale, now already a few recruitment agencies that are essentially the gatekeepers of matching young people in jobs, those recruitment, two of them already dropped their degree requirements because they found no evidence of actually getting better candidates just because they filter out the CVs that don't put a degree in there. But if this were to become even more generalized in the economy, then there would be some pressure on the academia, and then maybe one could expect some reform. But until then, I don't know why, I don't know if if a reform is possible, or why would the academia even care? Because there's a lot of these old professors, and by old I mean old enough to remember the protests of the 80s, for instance, who have a financial, personal, vested interest in social justice drivel. Their careers are being built on that.
Yeah, and if someone's livelihood depends um, on agreeing with a particular point, then it's going to be very difficult to persuade someone otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, there's not too many Genis Fiamengos out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. Let's get to the next one. Oh, this one is. Anyway. Coming from the local Swedish group wants legal abortions for men. Men should have the same right as women to decide not to be parents, according to a controversial new proposal from the Liberal Party's youthing in western Sweden, LUF Väst. Men who don't want to become fathers should be permitted to have a legal abortion up to the 18th week of a woman's pregnancy, say the Young Liberals. The cutoff date coincides with the last week in which a woman can terminate a pregnancy in Sweden. This means a man would renounce the duties and the rights of parenthood, LUF Väst chairman Marcus Nilsson told the local. By signing up for a legal abortion, then, a man would not have to pay maintenance for his child, but neither would he have any right to meet the child. The group believes legal abortion for men would promote equality between the sexes in the early stages of a pregnancy, giving men a chance to opt out. Women would also benefit if they knew from the get-go whether a man was willing to commit to parenthood, the Young Liberals say. Asked how a mother would explain to a child later in life what had happened to its father, Nielsen said, "This situation already exists with single women who choose to inseminate or simply don't know who the father is." He added, "We wouldn't want to make this something that was subject to secrecy. A mother could say, 'I consider this man to be your father, but legally he is not.'" Some social media users have welcomed the plan, but many have ridiculed it, and Nielsen said the group received a flurry of threats. One man wrote on Facebook that all our members should be put against a wall and shot. Johanna Fenden, a popular sports writer, was a lot more welcoming. "I think I'm of the view that this is actually quite sensible," she wrote on Twitter. Eva Arpi, an influential leader writer with the Svenska Dagbladet daily, disagreed. "No, men shouldn't be able to have legal abortions. Men should take the responsibility for their children. Period." Much of the criticism accused the Young Liberals of misogyny, something Nielsen was quick to reject. This motion was actually put forward at our annual meeting by a group of girls, he said. Nielsen added that the group was unlikely to take the plan any further. "It is something we thought was worthy of debate, but the reactions have been overwhelmingly conservative, with a lot of people viewing it as an attack on the nuclear family. We have other issues we're prioritizing, such as housing and employment." The idea comes on the heels of two proposals last month that got tongues wagging. The Young Liberals Stockholm branch said it wanted to legalize sibling incest for over 15s and to permit consensual necrophilia in cases where the deceased had written post-life sex requests into a will. A senior member of the Mother Party, Carl B. Hamilton, called the youngsters idiots and wondered if sex with hippos would be next on the agenda. Yeah, the editor at the local and his bias, he actually has a point. Sometimes the messenger matters. When this position comes from the same organization that proposed the legalization of necrophilia, whether you believe that's okay or not, it doesn't matter. In the eyes of the public, it's disgusting, it shouldn't happen, period. When that same group makes another point, no matter how sensible, it's less likely to be taken seriously.
Yeah, definitely, that's a good point.
I mean, it's like, I don't know, what is the least popular party in Germany? Is that the
Yeah,
NDP?
NPD.
The MPD? Okay, let's say the MPD says that men should get legal abortions. It makes a difference if it's the MPD saying it or whether it's the CDU or even the FDP. It really does matter. I know it shouldn't, but it does matter.
Yeah, it's a sort of Hitler was a vegetarian type of argument. It's
Yeah, pretty
largely it
much.
makes no fucking sense, but still emotionally it does have an impact.
Yes, and most political decisions are being taken based on emotion.
Yeah.
So in this regard, it's a bad news that LUF has come with this argument because financial abortion, as it's called in Denmark, is actually quite a popular argument because it was made by I think it was Danish People's Party, but I could be wrong. Don't pin me on that. I don't remember who made the argument first. But now it's a mainstream position, and it is a matter of time until that becomes reality in Denmark. I mean, it's already widely culturally acceptable, and probably the next parliament of Denmark will actually have to vote on such a bill. So it's probably going to happen this decade. But that's because it did not come from a highly questionable source or a source about which the public had a widely fresh and negative opinion. Because 1 year from now, everyone in Sweden will forget that LUF proposed the legalization of necrophilia. But for now, it's still fresh in the collective memory. So whatever they say, if it's even mildly rocking the boat of the establishment, is going to be mocked and ridiculed and definitely not taken seriously.
Yeah, I don't know if it's actually that big a deal. Um, I don't know to what extent people in Sweden specifically are have considered this idea of quote unquote financial abortion. Um, but I mean, it is from this article, it seems like it is something that people are now talking about, and even though maybe most people disagree, at least some people do agree. So I don't know if that is an improvement or if it's actually going to hurt this idea.
It's really hard to say how many people would agree because Sweden has this particularity. Very few people actually say what they think. And in the last year, we've seen a significant improvement on that in the sense that the so-called corridor of opinion, which used to dominate the Swedish mainstream establishment, has pretty much been demolished by a few very brave journalists who, by dubious means, have literally taken over some mainstream outlets and started really pushing all the politically incorrect opinions. And that's great. And one of those journalists was awarded the Journalist of the Year award in Sweden just last week. So things have been improving in the last year, but still there is a significant amount of the population who would never say what they think. For instance, last year, when no, 2 years ago, when there was elections and Sverigedemokraterna got almost 20% of the vote, you couldn't find anyone who said would vote for the SD. So even though we know that there 1/5 of the voters did vote for the SD, you couldn't find anyone to admit, yes, I voted for SD. Well, other than SD members, registered SD members. so,
Yeah,
so
it's like the shy Tory phenomenon, but
pretty
just
much.
turned up
Well,
to 11.
yes, absolutely. Very good analogy. Yeah, it's pretty much a shy Tory phenomenon, but a lot more dangerous because just last week, a bus driver was suspended from his workplace by his employer, a state agency, because in his spare time he had shared conservative opinions on Facebook. He shared links from various right-leaning sources. And he was suspended because what if he creates a climate of intolerance in the bus? No, seriously, that was their argument.
So let's create a climate of intolerance for conservative ideas, because otherwise that might create a climate of intolerance.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Now, in all fairness, the situation lasted for several days because the local populace turned up to the agency's door and said, "Are you fucking insane?" So just a few days later, they reinstated the dude and pretty much let the story die. But nevertheless, these kinds of things happen quite often. So there is still this climate of let's keep our opinions for ourselves so we can avoid losing our jobs and things of that nature. So the reason I'm mentioning all these is to press the point that we don't know and we cannot know how many Swedish people agree with anything, whether it's legal abortion or that feminism is cancer or anything of that nature. We just cannot know.
Yep.
All right. Yeah, I think we can move to the
Let's
next one.
go to the next one. This one is from the Journal from Ireland. 16-year-old faces charge for having consensual sex with girl the same age as him. Kildare district judge is voicing serious concerns for a 16-year-old boy in state care who is facing statutory rape charges after having consensual sex with a female the same age as him. At Naas District Court yesterday, the junior certificate student appeared in relation to 3 charges of criminal damage in Kildare on 4, 5 and 6 April of 2015. At a previous appearance in Naas Court, Judge Desmond Saidan had given him a warning to complete his junior certificate following charges of criminal damage. Now he is facing charges of having sex with a girl at a social event in Dublin while on bail for criminal damage offences. Evidence was given by defence solicitor Arthur Dennehy that a teenage boy met the girl at a social event in Dublin. The court heard how the girl, who is not in state care, went home and told her parents that consensual sexual contact had happened with the accused. Mr. Denny said that the parents, who came from a, quote, decent family, objected to this boy being in a relationship with their daughter. They contacted Garde and pressed charges. His parents have let him down. In court yesterday, the defense agreed with Judge Saidan when he said, "Someone has to guide him and be firm. Someone has to give him love. His parents have let him down." Judge Saidan outlined a report stating that the accused has a borderline personality disorder that impacts on his intellectual capacity and is having a, quote, profound effect on his vulnerability to a negative peer group. The judge said he is easily taken advantage of and needs the protection of the state. He warned a solicitor for the state, Shane Reynolds, that he has serious concerns for the boy's personal welfare. He said, "I don't think he understands what is going on." Inspector Mel Smith did not object to granting the teenager bail. Judge Saidan remanded him on continuing bail to appear at Naas District Court in relation to the criminal damage charges. It is anticipated that he will soon be appearing in court in Dublin facing charges of statutory rape.
Here we go again. I don't know if you're aware, Jon, but we're shocking our American listeners every time we talk about this teenage sex thingy. No, seriously, we really do. I mean, every time we talk about this, we shock our American listeners. I have to admit that I don't care. In Europe, it is the norm for the age of consent to be around 14 or 15, and there are countries such as Switzerland or Austria or Spain where it is 14 or even 13. And it has been so since centuries. And it's not considered something shameful or criminal or whatever. Whether you think that's a great thing or not, it's quite irrelevant. It has been working quite well for, I mean, none of the countries of Europe have succumbed to, vast amounts of child abuse and whatnot, which is the usual American argument when I say that maybe age of consent should be 14 or 15 rather than 17 or 18. But nevertheless, I mean, in this case, even with a puritanical view of the case is still retarded. I mean, if the quote-unquote victim is of same age and the charges are statutory rape, so there is no, not even the prosecution tries to make the case of coercion, then surely both of them are criminals.
Yeah, I mean, even those U.S. states where they have this ridiculously high age of consent of 17 or 18, they still have usually some sort of exception for if the ages of the two people involved are very close together, then it's not considered statutory rape. And I mean, in
Yeah,
this
the
case,
so-called
the
Romeo and
same.
Juliet laws, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, now I'm googling. Yeah, apparently the age of consent in Ireland is 17, and it's the highest in Europe. Not surprised at all.
Oh,
Ireland.
17, yeah.
Yes, Ireland has always been special in these kinds of things, in many regards. It's the highest in Europe. The second highest is Britain, so everyone else is 15 or less.
Yeah,
Uh,
Britain is 16.
yeah, Britain is 16, and everyone else is 15 or less. Uh, Nevertheless, I mean, if they're going to make the case for statutory rape, which I think is retarded per se, and the law is insane, but nevertheless, if they're going to make the case for that, then surely both of them should be charged, wouldn't it?
I would say that then neither of them could be charged. I mean, the idea of age of consent is that if you're below this age, then you can't meaningfully consent to sex. But in order to be able to rape, you should sort of imply that you willingly have sex and that at least you consent to it. Otherwise, I mean, that basically means that if you're not able to consent to sex, it means you don't know what you're doing. Then how can you be guilty of rape? That doesn't make any sense to say that.
Yeah, that's why they put the word statutory in front of it, so they don't have to make these kinds of arguments. I
Yeah,
mean,
but that's not usually what statutory rape is. I mean, statutory rape usually is if someone who's an adult has sex with a child, because the idea is that the adult knows what he's doing, and but the child does not, and therefore he or she is taking advantage of the child.
mhm. Yeah, but that didn't happen in here, and even by the words of the prosecution, they're not trying to make the case that someone was coerced into this. They're trying to make the case that, well, the quote-unquote victim is 16 and therefore has been statutorily raped. And again, it's not the quote-unquote victim that brings the charges; it's the parents who are apparently of a decent family, whatever the fuck that means.
Yeah, I mean, basically that little princess has slept with the lower class boy, and and he has despoiled her and so on. That can't be tolerated.
Yeah, it is that kind. I mean, I definitely expect to be that kind of mentality. I mean, let's not forget that when it comes to religious conservatism, you essentially have to look to Ireland and maybe Poland in Europe. I mean, when it comes to that kind of social conservatism, religious-based social conservatives, that's where you have to look. Ireland and some portions of Poland, particularly the north. Uh, the problem is that when that kind of thing spills into law, it's an issue. I mean, at least in Poland, yeah, sure, there's a huge portion of the population which is hardline religious conservative, but they don't try to make that into the law. I mean, they don't like you and they'll shun you and refuse to do business with you until you leave from their community, but they won't try to put you in jail for daring to break their little moral code. They won't try to kidnap you and put you into solitary confinement. They won't try to beat the crap out of you. They won't try to do any of that. But in Ireland, the religious conservative constituency has been able to maintain such ridiculous laws for so many years.
Yeah, but I always find that despicable. This idea. If you can have your religion, that's fine. You can practice that religion. You can have in your own community. You can have your own social norms and so on. That's all that is fine by me. But keep it out of the law. If you coerce people with the power of the state, they don't suddenly become more religious or anything like that. They just become hypocrites.
Nor do they become more likely to accept your moral code. In fact, they might actually
I mean,
become less likely.
they might follow it because they're afraid of punishment, but they're not going to agree with it.
Yes. Amazing. Yeah, there are no comments on this because Ireland has similar laws with the UK where no one can be named and whatnot. Although I would love to see the name of the mother of the so-called victim and the father of the so-called victim, because both of them are adults, and if they're such a decent family, let's all look at how decent they are. Yeah, the reason I'm saying this is that because this usually these Puritans are usually the kind of people that have the highest amount of skeletons in their closet. It's usually the case, not always, but usually the case. And I would have enjoyed to conduct a little investigation on that and confirm or maybe disprove my little prejudice and assumption about these kinds of people.
Yeah, I mean, if they are going after this poor boy who's been abandoned by his parents and is down in his luck and so on, and who hasn't done anything wrong, and if they're going to try to throw him in jail, how decent can they be?
Yes, absolutely. And if I'm to take the judge's word, I mean, the kid also has a mental disorder. I mean, he's disabled. Are you really going to go after a disabled teenager because, because your little princess likes to go on young dick? Really?
Yeah, let's go on to the next
Yeah,
piece.
let's go on. This is another one with the scandals with judges in Spain. I've placed an archive link because I'm trying to boycott Independent, and this story is so horribly written that they don't deserve the click. So, rape victim asked by judge if she tried closing her legs in Spain. A judge who allegedly asked the rape victim whether she tried closing her legs is the subject of a campaign to have her suspended. Judge Maria del Carmen Molina Mansilla in the Basque Country of Spain has been accused of offensive questioning of a woman who was describing how she was sexually and physically abused. Oh, Jesus Christ. It's not only horribly written, but horribly spelled as well.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Yeah,
Horrible.
in response, the Clara Como Amor Asociación, a campaign group for victims of gender crime, has claimed the judge's remarks showed a clear prejudice towards disbelieving the victim. She showed obvious disbelief of the testimony of the victim, questioned her without allowing her to answer, asking leading and offensive questions. Blanche Estrella Ruiz of the Clara Compo Amor Association said to the local. The unnamed woman arrived at her local police station in Vitoria to make a complaint that a man repeatedly abused her sexually and physically. When she made a statement, Judge Mansilla reportedly asked her, "Did you close your legs and all your female organs?" Well, actually, the actual question was, "Have you tried in all this time to close your legs?" But then again, a proper translation would have been problematic for the narrative of the article. Anyway, Ms. Ruiz, whose group is now seeking for the judge to be suspended, said the incident was not the first time that the judge had appeared to make light of a victim's allegations. Such questions are not only unnecessary to the investigation, but are completely offensive and violate the dignity of the victim, she said, according to the local. Unfortunately, this is not an isolated act, but such behavior by this judge is habitual and continuous. The Clara Como Amor Association has asked the General Council of the Judiciary, which reviews the independence of judges in Spain, to suspend the judge. The matter is ongoing. Officials of the Juzgado de Violencia sobre de la Mujer Vitoria, Court of Violence Against Women, told the Independent that the judge will not be commenting on the matter. Well, actually, that's not the Court of Violence Against Women because those ceased to exist 2 years ago. It's the prosecutorial office. Does anyone even do journalism these days? Anyway, Last paragraph, Spain has one of the lowest rates of victim assault in Europe, yet the problem remains serious, with 1 in 5 women believed to be victims of assault. Yeah, bullshit intensifies. What the actual case is, I've done quite a little bit of investigation on this, which is something that the Independent never does. It's actually a case where she says, the quote-unquote victim says that, oh my God, that individual repeatedly physically and sexually abused me. She has no physical evidence whatsoever. And by her own testimony, she went to his house several times over several months. So when you listen to that story, and presumably, and you're a judge, I mean, it kind of makes sense. I mean, have you tried closing your legs and not going there? Maybe that would have stopped it. I think it's a very legitimate question. Is it offensive? Yes, it is. But I don't think it's unnecessary to the investigation. I mean, when you go voluntarily several times in a place and it suddenly is a problem, and then you retroactively label all the others as problem, well, that's kind of an inconsistent story, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I can sort of understand why this judge asked this sort of snarky question. Maybe it was not the most professional thing to do, but it's not like I mean, it's not like it's totally unwarranted in a case like that, when it's this sort of rather unbelievable claim that, oh, he repeatedly abused me, but I just kept going back to him for some
Yeah,
reason.
and further reasons for me to defend this female judge, by the way, it's a female judge that asked this question, is that as I was looking through case law in Spain on this, because I was looking to see how a judge can be suspended for asking inappropriate questions, and hint to the feminists, you cannot suspend her. Trust me, you cannot. But anyway, it's not like the feminists actually know the laws of their own countries. Anyway, as I was looking through the case law, I found out that this lady was the assistant judge, which means that she's kind of a shadow judge. She was still learning at the infamous case back in 2011, when the woman accused her husband of domestic violence because he farted next to her. If you remember, that case was described to us in great detail by the Spanish feminists that we had on this show many years ago. By the way, today would be 3 years since we're doing this show. Anyway, this lady has seen quite a lot of frivolous rape and abuse cases in her life, and obviously she has developed a very a very sensitive nose to bullshit. So that kind of tends to increase the propensity towards snarky questions, towards asking questions in a very snarky way. Is it
Yeah.
a bit unprofessional? Yes. But is it unwarranted? Absolutely not.
Yeah, but of course you can always trust in the British media to blow this sort of thing completely out of proportion.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And not only blow it out of proportion, but, I don't know if it was intentionally. Maybe they just put the information through Google Translate. But really, I've looked for the actual quote with female organs, and I was unable to find it. The judge did not ask such thing. Uh, I mean, is it really that hard to look for the original source? I mean, Spanish is not Estonian or Zulu. It's a language spoken by hundreds of millions of people across the planet. It's very easy to find someone to make a proper translation from Spanish to English for a 5-word question.
Yeah, and I mean, you would expect someone who actually speaks Spanish to work at the Independent.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is the case. I mean, I would be surprised if no one who speaks Spanish works at the Independent. I mean, it's not, as I said, it's not Estonian. It's not a very hard, neither a hard language nor a very rare language at all. And also, this thing to translate Juzgado de Violencia sobre la Mujer, to translate it as the Court of Violence Against Women, that's intentional bias there. It's not. And again, those courts ceased to exist over 2 years ago because they were insane. I mean, it's not like they ceased to exist because they were merged into something else. No, 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 they're just considered insane for bloody good reason. They were instituted under their infamous gender violence law, which now is referred to as the period of gender Stalinism in Spain. That's the colloquial term that even the state-owned media uses it. I mean, it's not a secret. It's not a conspiracy. And I would have expected someone at the Independent to know these kinds of things. Or they could at least ask the BBC. I mean, even the BBC made a comprehensive report about the high numbers of false allegations and the insanity of the Spanish courts during the 2004-2014 period. I mean, it's not a secret anymore. It used to be quite a very concealed secret back in 2011 when I was writing about these things, or 2012, but now it's no longer a secret.
Yeah, but it's not the kind of thing that you sort of casually hear about usually. But you would actually have to do some research, which I guess that's what people need to do.
Yeah, but for these kinds of things, it would have taken 5 minutes of research. I mean, yeah, sure, I don't expect them to know all the history of women's courts in Spain, but at least not to mess up their names and to properly translate a 5-word question. That's something that, I'm sorry, I really do expect from an outlet as big as the Independent. I mean, this is not a... I mean, and if they can't deliver that, then they should label themselves as a very tiny progressivist blog, and that's fine. I don't expect that tiny progressivist blogs to do their due diligence.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they just figure that most of our readers have no idea about this sort of stuff, and we can just pull a fast one and get to the lunch break early today or something like that.
Yeah, and also get all the outrage clicks. And, they were correct if they presumed that. Most of their readers are completely clueless. And they're having the usual emotional outrage reaction, which brings a lot of clicks on the Independent, but doesn't spread the truth in any way, shape, or form. All right. The last one, actually not the last one, because I have another one that got to me. I'm such a news junkie that I was reading news during this show. Anyway, yeah, this is not the last one. From Bergens Tidende, the Bergens Times in Norway, the fight against rape starts in kindergarten. Sexual education should start earlier. And the article goes, 11% of Norwegian women and 1% of Norwegian men claim to have been raped, half of them before the age of 18. When we know that most rapes are committed in relatively close relations of lovers, friends, acquaintances, and guests at the party, it is clear that's where the bulk of the effort should lie. The sexual education that the students receive in Norwegian schools today starts too late, and it is too technical and too random to say that it works well for the Norwegian youth. At its best, there's probably some good out of it, but it's safe to say that it largely ignores important issues such as consent, boundary setting, norm criticism, and this is a Scandinavian weasel word, I'll have to explain it, pleasure and acceptance. Therefore, it is important that sex education in Norwegian schools be revolutionized and improved. The most important thing we can do to combat rape is to make sure it does not happen in the first place. When we know that most rapes are committed in relatively close relationships, as in they're committed by boyfriends, friends, acquaintances, and guests at the party, then it is obvious that this is where the bulk of the effort should lie. Therefore, through educational efforts, which is the most important instrument, but far from the only one, we can avail ourselves of the fight against this social problem. Other useful tools is to introduce procedural deadlines for moral matters to the police so that the violence of today ceases. Now, if you don't know what that means, don't ask me because I don't know what that means either. To ensure that sex education is good enough, then there are some elements that should form the basis. One, students should get annual, age-appropriate, and accessible sex education from kindergarten until they go out of high school. 2. The main focus must be on boundaries, integrity, and the need for an enthusiastic consent. 3. Sexual education must promote acceptance of different identities, orientations, and variations in sexual expression. 4. Criticism of norms, narrow gender role expectations, and social shame associated with sex. 5. The technical reproductive side of the current sex education should subside somewhat, and focus must increasingly be about sexual pleasure. In other words, if it feels good, do it. Hedonism on taxpayers' money. Fabulous. Anyway, 6. It must be informed of the pornographic materials, the lack of veracity, and the problematic aspects of pornography production. Wait a minute, didn't Norway abolish its state church? Anyway, and the last element, sexual education must also include teacher training. That doesn't happen today. Anyway, we expect teachers to be good and competent in this area. The situation today is that students get occasional sex education a few times during elementary school. This happens far from each year, and it starts in the 4th or 5th grade and ends before the students have finished the 10th grade. It is definitely not enough to say that my secondary school students are fully trained in this area, so this must be addressed. Skipping a bit, it is also important that such improvements in sex education enters the kindergarten. Age adaptation is naturally an issue here, but there are many aspects related to sex education that kindergarten children will understand. Particularly important is the focus on setting boundaries for combating rape and abuse, but also topics such as variation in gender expression, sexual orientation, and identity are good topics to begin with. The fight against rape and abuse begins in kindergartens and must continue throughout their schooling. The glove is thrown thereby, and the challenge is put to the country's educational policymakers. Give Norwegian school children and give kindergarten children an age-appropriate, norm-critical, here's that word again, and boundaries-focused sex education now. What a revolutionary article.
Yeah, somehow I think that the idea of age appropriate is a bit different from what most people understand.
Yeah, you think?
Maybe slightly different.
Yeah, maybe slightly different. Now, let's not forget, this is the country that considers that it is a human right for 7-year-olds to change their sex. No, seriously, that is the main policy discussion these days in the Ministry of Health in Norway. And it's very likely to be implemented. I mean, the only opposition that I was able to identify is from progressivists who think that it's not going far enough. So, this is the country where
Maybe we should just go down to 7 months.
yeah, no,
Or
actually,
maybe just as soon as people can speak.
yeah, no, they say that there should be no age limit at all because in Malta there is no limit. Now, I somehow think that in Malta there is no such thing as trans children because Malta is a more yeah, Malta is just a more normal society than Norway has been in the last 40 years. Anyway, so this is the country where this happens. It's also the country where your child can be taken away because the cat has peed on the floor 3 years before the child was born, and thus that may create a hostile environment for the upbringing of the child. And no, seriously, that's a legal argument that won in court by the Norwegian CPS, the Barnevernet. So this is a very special country when it comes to these kinds of things. So knowing this, thinking that their age-appropriate definition may be a little bit different than what normal people would think is, yeah, well, one should expect that their definition would differ. Also, in relation to small children, it's also the country where it's quite common for children's carnivals to be banned because, or postponed at least, although that one in Bergen was actually totally banned, because the children dressed in gender stereotypical fashion. So, in this context, I'm not sure I want their little sex education thingy to be accepted in any way, shape, or form. I would rather, I'm actually willing to believe that the current status quo is just better.
Yes, very likely. I mean, you don't need sex education in kindergarten. You just don't.
Yeah. Is it really that hard?
You've muted yourself.
Sorry. Is it really that hard to think that maybe, just maybe, kids can grow up, uh, you know, without knowing about rape until maybe they're at least the age of 10 or 11, or that is fifth or sixth grade?
Yeah, I mean that should be sufficient. I mean, you should teach your children you're not to get into the cars of suspicious strangers and so on, handing out candy, etc. But
Yeah,
that's
but
what
that's a
most people
different
already
thing.
do. Uh, but this sort of very in-depth kind of teaching about rape and all this sort of stuff, that really can wait.
Yeah, and this obsession with, yeah, let's teach kids about consent. Um, aren't we supposed to, oh yes, assume that children don't are not capable of giving consent? There is a reason we have this thing called, yeah, we talked about it earlier, statutory rape.
Yeah,
I
and this
mean,
age of consent. I mean, if people are legally not allowed to consent, why are you teaching them about consent?
yes, and oh, hold on a second. I wanted to address one. Oh, yeah, this one. The technical reproductive side of the current sex education should somehow be subsided, and the focus should be increasingly about sexual pleasure. Why? Why is it necessary to have, uh, extensive courses? Because let's remember, her proposal is to start sex education at the age of 4 and end it when you're 18. Why have so extensive courses about sexual pleasure in schools? Why? I mean, what happened with the old progressive ideal of, allowing individuals to explore themselves or amongst themselves when they're growing older, and that's it? What happened to that? Is it too libertarian?
And I really just don't understand why that sort of thing has to be taught in schools. I mean, yeah, of course, the sort of biological stuff, the sort of basic mechanics of how that works and so on, that should be part of sex ed. But
And it already is.
yeah, it already is. But do we really need to teach children about sex toys or whatever? I don't think so.
Yes, or do we need to, here you go, the sixth point, I think, the information about the pornographic materials' lack of veracity and the problematic aspects of pornography production. I'm sorry, but I think 11-year-olds can live fine and dandy without having to hear feminist theories about problematic aspects of pornography production. Am I really that radical in what I'm saying?
No.
James, any comments on this? James usually has his words with him when it comes to these kinds of things.
No, I'm staying out of this one.
That's unfortunate. That's really unfortunate. Yeah, I mean, and again, what happened with last time Norway and Sweden had discussions about pornography in schools was back in the days when the state church was very strong. That's why I said that, I thought that Norway has abolished its state church. But apparently, somehow, well, the bad ideas somehow are resurrecting through, are being resurrected through another channel. I mean, again, why? That's what I don't understand. Why? I mean, I understand why they think uh, porn is problematic and whatnot, but I don't understand why they think that's a great idea to teach the 11-year-olds about pornographic problematic aspects of pornography, or teach 7-year-olds or 6-year-olds about transgenderism, or 9-year-olds about sex toys. That's what I don't understand. Why?
Because they get to spread their ideology and proselytize.
Yes, but how would they be able to, one, understand it, and two, use it, since they're not legally allowed to use it anyway?
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean the practical.
even if you accept or no, even if you assume that everyone or most of the kids will buy into their ideology, it's still useless to them, at least for another several years.
Yeah, but I mean, for example, if we're talking about this sort of problematic aspects of pornography production, they can talk about how women are supposedly exploited in this business and this sort of thing. And it's not that that this knowledge is actually useful to students, but it will possibly
Cement
uh,
an underlying assumption there into the mind early on.
yeah, basically bringing them up to be good little feminists.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Although to be completely fair, Norway doesn't have to worry itself about problematic aspects of porn production. There is no porn being produced in Norway because the regulations and the taxes are so damn high that any sane Norwegian who wants to get into porn knows that they have to travel to Denmark or Hungary to do so, because there is no such thing as porn studios in Norway because it's bloody expensive to keep them. So Norway doesn't have to worry about this. There is no porn being produced in Norway. So no porn, no exploitation.
Yeah, but women abroad are being exploited and they are poor and therefore more vulnerable, and it's even worse.
Surely the poor Danish or Norwegian porn actors who work in studios in Denmark are very, very poor. Yes, yes. I mean,
Also, of course, those filthy foreigners are taking our jobs, so that's also.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, if you're a Hungarian porn actress, you have to go to the United States because you don't have a place in the Budapest studios because they're all full. So yeah, there's that. But I mean, the the actual payment rates in the Scandinavian porn scene are bigger than I think a factory worker in China makes in 1 week less than a Danish porn actor makes in less than 1 hour.
A
So
porn actor, a
actor
male actor.
or no, actress, yes, because yeah, the porn actors actually make slightly less, but still, even the male actors, make the wages of a Chinese worker in an hour and a half or something like that. So I mean, to paint those people as being oppressed sounds like a very disordered view of the world. In
It's very
addition to
much
being,
first world problems.
yeah, it is it's not even a first world problem because first that doesn't just because the first world is more advanced, it doesn't mean it doesn't have problems. It seems like a non-problem, really.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that porn workers are exploited as a class. Maybe some particular individuals in some particular situations might be, but that's also true in many other industries. So that's not anything that's in particular problematic about porn, I think.
Yeah, and it's rather the exception than the rule. And given the immense stigma and disapproval of the industry is very keen on persecuting every time such a case is discovered, which are remarkably rare. So yeah, there's that. I mean, and again, no one has been able to explain to me, and I even went in circles of Norwegian leftists and asked them to explain to me why should 5-year-olds be taught about problematic aspects of pornography production, or about sex toys, or about sexual pleasure at the age of 5, 6, 7, 8. No one has been able to give me a comprehensive explanation. You gave me one. Well, they're making them good little feminists. Maybe. I don't know if. Probably it works. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know
Anyway,
if it works, but I think that is the goal.
yeah, fair enough. As I said, I'm such a news junkie that I was reading news even during the show, and this particular piece of news has come to my attention from London today, which is the place where I'm going to be landing when I'll go to the conference this July. Anyway, just a short reminder that there's a conference this July. Private clinic is facing protest over circumcision row. One of the UK's largest male circumcision clinics is facing a protest by campaigners who claim the procedure amounts to child abuse. Justice for Men and Boys, a group which says it advocates for the rights of males, will demonstrate outside of the Thornhill Clinic, Luton, on March 22nd in opposition to what it calls the mutilation of boys. Though circumcision for non-medical reason is available on the NHS, the procedure is still popular. Is not available on the NHS. The procedure is still popular for people from a number of different backgrounds, many of whom use the Thornhill Clinic. However, Justice for Men and Boys claims that the procedure is cruel, and as young boys are not able to give consent. J4MB leader Mike Buchanan told the Luton News, "The whole point is to take away material that contact nerves and give pleasure to men during sex. People say that it is for hygiene reason, but it is for cultural and religious thing that has survived. It should be consigned to history." In a statement, Thornhill Clinic told the Luton News, "We take great pride in our services, particularly with the welfare of our babies, children and adults. Our fully trained doctors have performed several thousand operations and are very skilled, experienced, and above all, provide the very highest standards of professional care. Our presence gives parents and communities the option to use a registered and reputable clinic to have their sons circumcised. This in turn will stop the many home circumcisions that are currently taking place in and around the United Kingdom. The home is an unsafe environment to carry out this or any operation." So, thumbs up or thumbs down for the protest?
Yeah, thumbs up.
It depends how many people will Mike be able to gather. Probably, I mean, I don't know. Targeting the largest clinic, they can afford to dismiss it. On the other hand, maybe it is more visible if you target Thornhill Clinic rather than targeting, smaller clinics who may fold under pressure.
I mean, if you target some small clinic, it just looks like it's sort of a personal vendetta against them, and you're just personally singling out this small little clinic. If you go after a larger one, it looks like you're not going specifically after this clinic out of some sort of vicious impulse, but that you're actually just trying to target circumcision itself, and it's about this issue and not this particular clinic, which I think is the better message to send.
Yeah. That's, I don't know. I mean, I'm expecting March 22nd, which is what, next, another week from next Tuesday. So probably on March 25 we'll have news on this show about how it went through. Maybe I'll make a short interview with Mike. And crap, we can't play recordings on this show, can't we? Damn it, we can't. Then maybe I'll ask Mike and put the video on my channel and just link it through this show. Damn it.
Thank you, Google.
Yeah, thank you, Google. Every time I try to play a recording, it sounds like crap because potato. Yeah. But nevertheless, I mean, I hope Mike gets to. I mean, if he gathers 10 people or 15, it may already be enough if they have a very huge banner. I mean, I'm trying to be realistic here. I don't think he'll gather more than 15 people. It's not because of Mike's incapability of convincing more people, but it's geographical reality. How many Luton is de facto in London, but how many people would be willing to travel from all corners of even London itself all the way up to Luton, let alone from other corners of the United Kingdom? I don't think there would be too many of them.
Yeah, probably not. I want to. I found this sort of PR statement by this clinic sort of amusing. It's just a sort of sort of political speech that just says nothing like you have the very highest standards of professional care, blah blah blah. That was never in question.
Yeah.
If you have the very highest standard of care in I don't know operations that remove people's heads, that wouldn't be very reassuring, because the problem is still beheading, and not that it's not carried out under under good conditions, or that it's not sanitary enough or something like that. No, the problem is that you're cutting off a body part that shouldn't be cut off.
Yeah, pretty much. Although their argument, because they also have a substantive argument there.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, we exist here, and therefore, if we exist here, we prevent circumcisions taking place in very unsafe, unsanitary environments and whatnot.
And that is a good point. That is a good point.
Yeah, it is a substantive argument, but nevertheless, it is not at best, it's an argument that, look, if we don't exist, maybe the situation would be worse, and maybe it would be. I don't know, but that's not answering to the object of the protest, which the protest says, well, no, circumcision should be consigned to history. It should not exist at all.
Yeah, I mean, if no clinics were offering circumcision, there would definitely be a lot fewer circumcisions.
Absolutely. As we've seen in northern Norway, we discussed this at length last show or 2 shows ago. Newborn baby boys into Jewish and Muslim families. Eventually, most of the parents said, well, screw it. He'll do it when he's older, if he'll do it, and that's it. Because we're not traveling all the way to Oslo just for that. So that can indeed be the effect. Sure, this can also lead to instances of circumcisions being performed in unsanitary, unsafe environments and whatnot. But there is no such thing as solutions. There's only trade-offs.
Yeah, and I mean. It's definitely a concern that some circumcisions might be performed at home and under very unsafe conditions, but I think the number is going to be much, much, much smaller than the number of circumcisions performed today.
Yes. In hospitals and very safe environment under high standards, yes, by very skilled and experienced, and above all, on the highest standards of professional care. I'm trying to quote these these the PR officers of the Thornhill Clinic. Yeah, I don't know. We'll wait and see, and hopefully Mike's protest will trigger a much bigger headline than just in the local news, because it is a relevant topic.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Anyway, since this year is pretty much a year where AVFM in general is focused on MGM, you're probably going to get live text or very up-to-date information on voiceformen.com homepage. As far as I know from Mike, he'll try to cover it pretty much in a live text format. So yeah, we'll see about that. That's pretty much it. We've been on for 102 minutes. That's probably enough for this slow news week.
Yes, but I do want to take one more minute to make a final suggestion, and that is for all you fine folks to take the red pill.
Take the red pill. Goodbye, everyone. Mr. Huff, please take us out.